As you know, one of the most important themes that we try to address on a regular basis on this program is the fact that at the end of most elections for the last 20 years, one side or the other walks away feeling like they got gypped, that they got cheated, that they got robbed. One way or the other, there's always one group of voters who feel like the election was not handled properly. It's insidious, it's destructive, it undermines the very democratic process we use in this constitutional republic. And serious individuals are actually trying to fix that problem. One of them is Ken Cuccinelli. He is the chairman of the Election Transparency Initiative, and he joins us now. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Good to be with you, Larry.
Well, I'm here in Washington, D.C., where now anyone can vote, whether they're a citizen or not, whether they're in the country legally or not. If you've been traveling and you decided to stay for a nice 6-week vacation in our nation's capital, you can vote. Ken, what's going on here?
Yeah, this is a political virtue signaling run amok. This is not supported by any demographic of Americans. Only radical leftists who tend to be the elected members of the Democrat Party these days really support this. And among those not listed in your list of shocking voters in DC are employees and diplomats at the Russian and Chinese embassies. And lest anybody think we're being hyperbolic, the Washington Post editorial page has made the same complaint that you and I are making, Larry. Not a common overlap. But here, I have a little category. You know it's bad when even the Washington Post thinks you've gone crazy.
Yeah. And listen, this same district council in Washington, by the way, dominated by Democrats. Not one Republican has a voice in government in Washington, D.C. at the local level. And in the last presidential election, I believe they voted for Democrats 94%. So
Right.
this is a Democrat Party problem in this town. The same district council wrote the new crime bill here, the crime code. That was so outrageous, and we beat the drum here from day one about it, that 50 Democrats in the House and something like 30 Democrats in the Senate joined Republicans in overriding it. The president of the United States vetoed that crime legislation. But this, letting illegal aliens vote, letting Chinese nationals vote, this
Right.
Chuck Schumer didn't even take up.
He wouldn't even take it up. And one of our foci before it became law last week was exactly that. It was getting the Democrats to do on this bill the same thing they had done on the outrageous crime bill in Washington, D.C., which lowered penalties for carjacking, and the list goes on. The same week, one of the House members had been assaulted in an elevator in her apartment. But there, the Democrats, two-thirds of them were saw the light, and or maybe the political wins. Here they are so stuck. Again, the political virtue signaling piece. They're afraid of their own radical leftist base, and so they haven't moved an inch. Chuck
Yeah.
Schumer hasn't even brought it up because he knows that it's a dangerous vote for his folks to vote no, and it only makes sense for them to vote yes.
What does that tell you that it's dangerous for Democrats to vote, that it's improper for non citizens to be voting in elections in our nation's capital? Again, going beyond non citizens, people who are either here illegally or literally just tourists visiting
Right.
for over a month. I mean,
So
that tells you how insidious this is and how much control they want. I got to ask you though. I mean, we love federalism. We're Republicans. We love local control
yes.
here. In a case like this, though, what's the argument against federal legislation for all
Well,
elections, not just federal elections, but for all elections, saying no, you got to be an American citizen to vote?
Well, first of all, this is the federal district. It is not a state. And so Congress is responsible for local legislation. They a number of decades ago, as you and I know, of course, they gave DC local authority, and that was not true for most of the history of the District of Columbia. Again, because it is the federal seat of government, and
Yeah.
that's written into the Constitution to be treated differently. So we are respecting the Constitution while we call on Congress to override this. This is not a case where there have been non-citizen voting efforts in New York City and other things, and those of us who are conservatives who work in election reforms have not called on Congress to override those. There are lawsuits because we think it's unconstitutional that non-Americans vote, but it is not. Federalism is respected where it involves states and localities. I
Yeah.
would point out that even in those cities and those states, still the vast majority of their residents, citizens, agree with us, agree with the position you and I are talking about here, Larry, and that is that only U.S. citizens should have the right to vote. It's one of the benefits of citizenship. It's part of what makes citizenship special, and we
Right.
should keep it special.
Right. Honestly, at some point you have to ask, what's the point of becoming a citizen, let alone what's the point of coming into the country and immigrating legally? And yeah,
Legal.
as soon as we let the foot in the door of saying, yeah, Congress should step in and override local jurisdiction on this election, well, then you're basically conceding that they can come in and override voter ID laws or same day voting, same day risk, things like that. I want to move on to some other aspects here because we're in the thick of the presidential campaign right now. President Trump says he's the man to win in 2024. And listen, I'm wanting to see this primary process play out, but one must wonder. He thinks he got the election stolen because of shady election laws back in 2024. Has enough changed in those states that matter that it won't happen again to him? It seems weird for me for President Trump to say, "Listen, I got robbed last time around. Let's do it again," unless you can prove you're not going to get robbed again. And Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Arizona, have they done enough, Ken Cuccinelli, to show us a different vision for the next election?
Yeah, well, take two of those three states you just mentioned. Wisconsin has banned the drop boxes. There are five cities for Zuckerbucks have got a Zuckerbucks ban now in place.
Okay,
Arizona passed good reform legislation. And so, yes, is the answer. A lot of things have changed and improved. Zuckerbucks is banned in almost half the states now. And Zuckerbucks alone flipped the election in 2020. So we
right.
are well prepared. And as you know, you covered the Virginia election in 2021. And on a radio interview you had with Glenn Youngkin, he talked about how bad Virginia's election laws were with because of the Democrat control and how they changed everything. And he said,
Yeah,
"Look, I don't like these rules, but these are the rules, and we need to win by these rules." And by golly, we set out and we did it in Virginia. And that
that's right.
model, where we essentially invade the election offices with our own folks to run elections, is part of what the Election Transparency Initiative that I lead is pushing for the next. We've been pushing it since 21, but we're pushing it straight through the presidential election and beyond. We need to be a permanent presence in those election offices, and it really does make a difference. It made a difference in Virginia, and that model's being taken across the country very effectively. So
Legally and
individual
politely
people
invade, I'll
listening to
add, just before, we get
just real
canceled.
quick, this is one thing that people listening to us can do themselves.
Yeah, that is a great thing. And again, that's the Election Transparency Initiative where you can get all that information. Real fast, you mentioned Arizona. I saw Carrie Lake and her lawsuit at the state Supreme Court actually move a little bit yesterday with regard to Maricopa County. It's now on in her court. She must prove that there are enough ballots that were improperly counted or permitted to have made a difference. Is that where we stand here? Is that even possible?
Well, I don't know if she can show direct evidence of a number that would overcome the gap. But that is the position you want to be in. And frankly, if you don't have that much evidence, then as for instance did exist in my view in Georgia in 2020 for President Trump, then I don't think it warrants continuing forward. I get what the court is doing, but if she does have the evidence to show that a number of mistakes or violations of the law that are beyond the numbers that she lost by, then it is reasonable to go forward. So, this is
Wow.
the kind of opportunity you want if you're a candidate in Carrie Lake's position. So now she's got it.
So that was somewhat of a win for Kerry Lake. That's great. And also, I know that Attorney General's race is actually getting very interesting as they continue to examine the results there. So the book is not yet really closed on Arizona 2022. I guess we're still in the election desk here. Thanks, Ken Cuccinelli. It's always great to talk with you. Thanks for being on top of it at the Election Transparency Institute. We'll be back with more O'Connor tonight.